long ago. I was, my experience is being pretty much broken homeless out in LA. That was 8 years ago. And although I wasn't homeless, I was living in a men's recovery house, which, 18 men in and out. But I spent most of my time out on the streets, either going to work or riding a bus or going to meetings and doing this and that. But I think I had been on Facebook only a couple years. I got on in 2009, and this was 2011, and I'm sitting on the bus. I had the option to use Facebook, and I'm trying to make a connection with my family because I'm 2,000 miles away from them. And I realized, these Facebook memories, this is nothing. I need my family. I need the people in front of me,
Yeah.
And, so that kind of broke the spell that was over me for a little while, So I don't think it's of any virtue of mine for not to be sucked into the Facebook social media world. It's just that experience itself,
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, absolutely. So how does the whole, I don't know if you heard the thing about Carl Wicklund, 30 years among the dead. I touched on a little bit with Jerry, but the idea that there's this etheric underworld of Hades that we're terrified of, but actually it's just all spirits that are unresolved. People that have died that don't know they're dead. That's what Carl Wicklund talks about. And he's got probably 200 cases, just case after case after case of contact with the spirit. This guy was around in the early 1911, something like that. Ran a practice with his wife. His wife was a medium. This is what Sherry does, by the way, partners with Jerry. Jerry's new book that's coming out, Sherry's working on that with him. So she's sort of this same thinking, this same approach, which is that these are, actually, I don't want to speak for her, but that these are spirits and are demons, and you can communicate with them. They have a certain anatomy to them. And how does that strike you, especially with the alcoholism and stuff like that?
Well, you can see the serious look on my face. You've got me, I get the goosebumps. 1900s is an interesting time. Rudolf Steiner and all them was the turn of the century. There's something there for sure. And I never heard of Carl Wicklund.
It's either Wicklund or Wickman. I think it's Wickland.
Yeah, I'm gonna look that up definitely. And so for my experience, immediately. So Jerry, this is what's interesting about Jerry. This is how authentic he is. I can tell because everything that he talks about was my experience to a certain level. And alcoholism and addiction is the gateway into it. And he had my attention immediately, not just with my own experiencing these entities myself, but also working with other addicts in my recovery. It's constantly. It's been 8 years now, and there's still another level to it. I keep finding myself in, and when Jerry came out and started talking the way he was, that's the guy that helped me 8 years ago in general. So what Jerry does through his experience, he's able to he can get through to the individual, the real person that's inside. That's what he talks about, snapping the rubber bands or whatever little tools he's developed to work with them. He can talk to the person versus the entity. And that's my experience. That's kind of what I do when I work with addicts. And not so much to that level. He's in a psych ward, and so he's really surrounded by it. And for me, it's detoxes or just meetings or treatment centers and stuff, or sometimes recovery houses. But the experience when you're going through it. So it literally was my first day. So I was introduced when I landed out in California. I didn't go out there to get sober or anything. I'm 2,000 miles away from home. I was brought to a treatment center. It's one of America's oldest men's detoxes. It's free. It's called Charlie Street Detox. But I was brought there. They weren't able to give me a bed there. I didn't qualify because you have to be wet. You have to be drunk. But those men knew exactly what to do with me. There's out in California, you can throw a rock, hit a sober living. I didn't know what a sober living was. I knew what a halfway house was. But anyhow, they heard I was from St. Louis, and a gentleman from St. Louis, pretty much with the same exact experience as me. And this is my mentor. This is my Jerry.
Mm-hmm.
They had heard that I was from St. Louis, gave me this guy's number, and he took me into his house when no one else would. Gave me a shot. The experience, you know, for me, this is how he got through to me. This is the miracle of recovery. You know, that the axiom that I came up with is one alcoholic helping another when everyone else has failed before.
Mm-hmm.
Not like anybody was saying anything different to me, except for in this one particular case is when John, literally my first conversation with him on the phone, I didn't know who this guy was. I just wanted a bed, you know. I didn't know anything about recovery. To that point, your mind has taken over and knows that thought stream, just like he describes, dead on. It was intense. I mean, that was my insanity. That was my suffering. It was just constant. And some people actually describe it as the obsession, which is funny. And obsession is a possession. It can be. But
Yeah.
my first conversation with John was, Aaron, you have a head that lies you and it wants you dead, but it'll settle for drunk or loaded. And I want you to do this and this. He gave me some direction. Alcoholics Anonymous, you know, it's just a book, dude. It's kind of like Christianity. It's a Bible. You know, without the Bible, what do the Christians have? And so John really worked out of that book, which I think is key in a lot of people's treatment. Whether, you know, when you got your head, when they're there and they're doing that to you constantly, it's insane. Just I want to describe it. Like I said, you have a head that lies you once you dead. So he began treating me. He knew how to talk to me and then separate the alcoholism, the obsession, the entities, which what we're talking about here. And he said, Aaron, I want you to carry the thought of thy will, not mine, be done with you as much as you can think, because like we said, it's better than anything that you got going on up there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, okay, man, whatever. But I was like, who is this guy? You know, I've never had anybody talk to me that way. And I don't know, there was some bit of hope. But anyway, first week at that house, I was not saying "I will be done." I will not mine be done. I really got the experience of, you know, I was a week away from 20 years of drinking and using the pharmaceutical drugs as well, and that's when it really got exciting. I mean, my head, it was it was intense, draining. You get back to the recovery house half a day, by afternoon time, you're exhausted. And you're like, why am I so tired? And they would talk about that at the recovery house quite a bit, is that thinking. So that's my foundation. I picked up those tools. I picked up the Thy Will Be Dones. I had no choice, really. And I did get some relief. It was better for me to carry that thought, Thy Will Be Done. What else is important in this experience is the third step prayer. There's a third step prayer in the big book, and you know, I was supposed to memorize it, and I did. I would literally go throughout the day saying that. You know, I had a roommate. His name was Martin. He had a clicker, and he would count the "Thou will be done" as he said throughout the day. I think he'd gotten to the point of 4,000 one time. We'd share it in a meeting. It was just so bizarre, but you know, for Martin, that thinking, those entities that we're talking about were very real. You know, that experience at the recovery house, I really it kept me in the wet room. Wet room was where you first started. You know, you could progress through the house, 18 beds. And this particular room was 8 beds, 4 bunk beds. Anyway, they called it the wet room. They kept me there for a year just because they thought it'd be good for me, and it was. I learned a lot there with all those men who were coming in and out. But one of the things I thought that really affected me was when the lights went out. It was time for bed.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I had my detox there in the house. It's pretty intense, the nightmares, all that. I had my own experience, but then I started getting everybody else's. I saw the other side of it. The nightmares that these men were having, the things that they were saying, the battles that were going on. I mean, without that, I you know, that's part of my experience. I'm sure Jerry could and would know what that's like. You know, when at nighttime shift as a psych ward, you can hear all that stuff. I've been there too. So there's that too. And after a couple years of getting that experience, you know, I worked with addicts intensely every day. It was a very intense discipline. You know, detoxes. We volunteered at the Charlie Street, volunteered at Rock Center, and you know, all the meetings that we did. I would do like 14, 15 meetings a week. The reading of the book, I read 2 or 3 chapters a day. And, I'm not promoting AA so much as I am just trying to share with you how it gave me relief from all that thinking, whether it's a prayer, whether it's a book. I'm sure the Bible could do it. There's many other options out there, or disciplines. But it took a couple years before I could really start seeing that, oh my God, I do have a head that lies to me. These aren't my thoughts, because I got a separation from it, got some peace, got some recovery behind me, and then they come at you again. They do. Generally, that's whenever any of the high stress stuff, when you're thinking about the future, when you're thinking about the past, I got to start seeing some interesting things. I'm like, that's not my thinking. There's no, where does that come from? During that time, YouTube was a great experience. In 2011, 2012 was what we're talking about. The talk of psychopathy. I had a little trouble identifying as an alcoholic. Took me a few years. I didn't really understand it. Our definition of alcoholism is a twofold illness. It's the obsession, it's the allergy of the body coupled with obsession of the mind. So whatever the mind-altering substance is, for me, it was alcohol, drugs. It would trigger an allergic reaction, which they called the obsession. And once that, voila, there you go. You got an alcoholic. Why does that guy continue drinking? Well, he's got a family, a job, and he's losing it all, whatever. But that also opens up the door for these entities. Meth is a good example. I mean, that's the easiest one to see. But I can tell you alcohol, heroin, there's plenty out there, whatever opens the gates for them. And back to what I was talking about with the YouTube. So I'm looking at psychopathy. I thought, okay, I might be a secondary psychopath, because at the time I was doing the step work. I was really taking a look at my past, my actions, the things that I had actually done. Was that me who did these things? Yeah, it was you who did these things. And so I started looking at psychopathy. At that time, a lot of good stuff was out there with it. Interesting. I got the experience of the V2K. I was working at a military contractor, rapid manufacturing. We subcontracted for Northrop Grumman and all them, building Predator drones. I was making $9 an hour doing wiring harnesses for Predator drones, which is weird. And that's when I got my V2K. If it wasn't for the YouTube community and those conversations going on at that time, I could tell you they would have got me. They did get a friend of mine there. They got her good. I didn't see it until I could look back on it, because when it's happening, the only thing I could differentiate was when that voice came in my mind. It was like a microphone. Aaron, in a female's voice. I'm like, ain't my cubby working? And I'm like, Aaron. And I said, nope, you're not doing this. You do not have permission to do that. That's literally what it just came out, and it went away. I got laid off the next day. The main head engineer came down from his office, noontime, told me to pack my stuff. You're getting laid off. And he kept apologizing to me over and over again. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. And I'm like, what do you mean? What do you mean I'm getting laid off? I was like one of their best employees, man. I could speak English, I could read schematics, and my work was great. So they walked me out. Losing your job out there when you're homeless, that was kind of a big deal. So I didn't have time to process it. It only took about a week, and I was like, that was V2K, And I started thinking about my friends.
Do you mean voice to skull, right? Is that what
Okay.
you mean? Okay.
Yeah, very real. So again, it ties in with what we're talking about here. My thinking, or me, versus those entities, which I had dealt with. That's how I walked in, across that threshold in the recovery house and all that. That will be done. The praying, and the YouTube community, just talking about this stuff, being aware of it. So, it was really important for me at that time. I spent a lot of time doing a lot of work and not thinking, although there was going on, just letting it pass by. I had a great routine out there with what they gave me, the meetings and the recovery work and all that stuff, especially working with all the other addicts. You had the experience, it seems, with your you were a counselor at a wilderness,
Yeah.
which
Yeah.
is, I'd love to hear more about that. So you know what it's like working with other addicts or young kids or anything like that. You know the involvement. You know all that. You know how much time it takes. You know how you get out of self when you're thinking about other people. So that was key in me treating and separating from those entities and getting, know thyself is what it is. So 4 years, I'm back home. Out here in St. Louis, they don't have the resources they had out in California. It was shocking to me. Although they have AA meetings and stuff like that, there's no detoxes, there's no treatment centers, nothing like what they have out in California. It's actually, California's got anything going on. They got some really good recovery out there, and they got some good resources. But I had to continue doing what I was doing out in California. I can admit it was a cult. That's what it was. It was a cult of men that put recovery first, and you got to do this, or if you don't, you're going to die, you're going to get drunk,
Yeah. It's an ascension program. And
I like that. Yes.
Yeah.
And it works. But if you don't separate yourself from that or move away or start advancing at the right time, it can go bad. I've seen that too. My experience is I came home, and just completely walked away from my fellowship and everything. So it was very difficult. My response was to try and do everything I was doing out there. Out here, what was missing was taking men into treatment and having a place to work with them, recovery houses, sober livings, and stuff like that. So anyhow, I'm on the streets doing it. My routine basically was I'd take a guy to the hospital. I took a lot of guys to the hospital. It was psych wards. Out here, you can't go to a psych ward and go, I'm mentally ill from using methamphetamines for the last 3 months and not sleeping for 3 weeks. That doesn't count as a mental illness. You got to literally tell them, I want to kill myself. I'd be there, sign an affidavit. I really started developing a way to find these men treatment, and that was, walking in the hospital. And anyway, you can get 3 days. You can get 3 days if you're lucky, and then you have to find place for these addicts to go. Generally, there is no more 28-day treatment centers. So anyway, I'm really on my own. I'm like, all of a sudden I'm in a position where I know more than most people in my area. So they're looking to me all of a sudden, and what I had developed, and I didn't realize, is just like Jerry does. I've had all these tools and stuff that I had developed working with addicts, which is in knowing how to talk to the actual individual who hasn't probably been talked to in a long time, versus listening to those entities, that thinking, those thoughts. And I'm good at it. So I developed a reputation for being able to get the kind of people into treatment that no one else could before. I can get through to guys. And that's coupled with my own experience, knowing who I am and all that experience. But that's how I can tell Jerry's for real. Jerry's for real. It took him 30 years, but because he was working with those guys every day. And one of the key things is, it just ain't right, because it's just like my experience my first day. No one said, Aaron, you're crazy, these thoughts and all that stuff. They didn't shame me. They didn't disregard them. For the first time, they actually almost listened and acknowledged, okay, yeah, and they listened. But we're going to do this, up until I grew enough. And that's what Jerry does. He's actually having these schizophrenics, alcoholics or addicts or whatever. For the first time, someone's actually listening to them. I mean, that's getting through to somebody. So that's a key aspect to a lot of this, that's put me in some very interesting situations and revealed some very interesting things as well to me, because not everybody has something so far out to say as some of these experiences that he relates, or I can relate to you. But when they do happen, you're like, oh. And sometimes they're coupled with other experiences, manifestations, energies. When he describes the electric charge coming out of the trash can.
Yeah.
That's not, he's not lying.
Yeah. I've seen that too, actually.
Have you?
Yeah. Yeah, I was sitting on the couch. Someone I was with, I'll just say that, was on the floor in front of me, and she had she has I don't know how many demons she has, but she's
Yeah.
been through the whole gamut. And my mom had these old 1970s box lights. They're about this big, they're about this tall, and they have a diamond cut plastic top that displaces the light, and inside are basically 7 old school Christmas lights, like glass bulb Christmas lights.
Yeah.
And you hook that up to your speakers on the stereo,
I
and as
recall
you,
those.
yeah, and as you play, the different lights shine. These were not. I didn't even have a stereo that, that these would hook up to. I had them because they were my mom's. She was
Yeah.
staring at them, and the fucking light bulb exploded inside the thing. I'm not misremembering this. They weren't plugged into anything. There's no, and I understand what a capacitor is. There's no capacitor inside there.
Right.
There's
Yes,
not
sir.
something. Yeah, there's not. You know, if anyone doesn't know, a capacitor holds power. There's not. There was no. It was just light bulbs and wires. That's all was there.
So
And
you said misremembering. That's a
yeah,
process we experience when you see something like that. How many times, how many people in this world are just having these experiences, and but they're programmed to either just disregard it because it doesn't fit
yeah,
into anything, and it's gone.
yep.
It's blocked out.
This
So
book by a pretty bad dude.
mind
Actually,
work. Yep.
he explains how that works. 95% of your brain is pattern resolving.
Hmm.
It's resolving thoughts. It's not analyzing thoughts. It's resolving. It's like that thing that just whipped by me. It's probably a bird. Why? Because it's daytime. I'm outside, and something that would travel that fast is probably a bird. And we assign truth more than we discern truth. And that's a biggie. And then if you catch yourself perceiving something,
Yeah.
like you watch someone and she was mad when this happened. She stared into this light and exploded. She turned around at me like, "Did you see what I just did?" And of course I did. I was
Yeah.
just like, it's only because I only probably remember it because she looked at me, and it's like that's recorded. I'm not able to resolve that, you know. So I was able to kind of create an island around it, going, I don't know what the hell this was.
Right.
And I've seen a lot of these alter personalities come out. And that's why in my first book was all about multiple personalities and about how to program a multiple, and just reading
Very
it
real.
into all that history. Only now after, although Jerry definitely helped, but I was already familiar with Jerry's work, but it was reading this Carl Wicklund book,
Yeah.
30 Days Among the Dead. It's only now am I starting to go, wait a minute, this would be a whole new way of looking at this. And this is that book up now. It's 30 Years Among the Dead. It's Carl
Yeah.
Wicklund. He's a doctor. Him and his wife did this. And 1861 to 1945. This is all in Chicago and LA. Just case after case after case. It's only now when I relook at all my experiences, which are
Yeah.
not a lot, nothing like Jerry, you know, probably nothing like you either. I could probably add up maybe
But
2
I
or
don't.
3 years.
Doesn't matter, because when you talk about resolving, I mean, that's been my last 8 years. It's a terrible thing to have to do it on your own.
Mm.
So whether it's just one, if you can just talking about it, it's amazing.
Well, what the alchemy, yeah. Here, to case in point, if you don't know that the thoughts are not yours, you
Yeah.
own them. You are intertwined with them. Here's the thoughts, and here's you. You
Mhm.
think these are the same thing. It's only when someone can come in and necromance you, like a necromancer. Someone can come in and say that thought doesn't belong to you. It's the only time where you would first be able to look at this and go, wait a minute, this is over here,
Yeah.
this thought, and here I am. This is legally, spiritually, a separation. You've now separated your
That's
identity from the thought. That's huge. I mean, like, that's like, I think that's honestly all of it. Like, I think that's all of it, if you think about it, because once you pry that apart,
Yeah.
the real healing takes place, because this identity is like, wait, that's not fucking me. I'm not a psychopath. This thought was.
Yep.
I'm not a malignant narcissist. This thought was. I'm not haunted by alcohol. This thought is, and I've allowed it into my auric being. And that's why I keep coming back to, this is all about the ego. We have to learn how to strengthen our egos and stop poking holes in them, stop jabbing them with knives, you know, because
I appreciate you talking about that way, because so I'm at another level. So you're constantly growing. We're adding more is being revealed to us. And it's difficult if you don't have the fellowship, if you're not around the other individuals who have that. Well, I would say that we have a singleness of purpose here. You know, we're both healing. We start off that separation process. We do this. And it's so good to hear you talk about this way. And darn it, I don't want to lose my train of thought. But wow, yeah, the alchemy, the healing, and you know, there's other levels to it. So here we are. You're mapping new ground. You know, it's great that Wickland wrote a book about it in 1900, but there hasn't been anything in between then. Maybe talked about. You know.
Well, but there's also, not to get all conspiratorial, but historically, I can show you why there's not been any other talk about it. And as soon as Prohibition started, so first thing we did is we're like, okay, actually before Prohibition, we were like, there's no such thing as ether. That was the very first thing we did. 1905, we said special relativity is the key to the universe. We live in a complete vacuum. There is no plasmatic ether. There is no Hades. And I'm using that word on purpose. We've turned this world, Hades, underworld. We've turned that into a bad, evil thing that we fear. It's completed this concept of hell.
Yeah.
Gets us as far away from the spiritual world as we possibly can go. And that's when Hollywood comes in and paints every ghost, every spirit, every devil as like this evil creature that's here to, you know, to lick you with flames for the rest of your life. So it's a constant psychological separation from us and the outer world, which means that when we hear these thoughts, we have no one else to blame but ourselves. We have no choice but to claim those as our own. Then if you add that to Prohibition, the fact that we made alcohol illegal, and then we started an assault on any kind of spiritual healing at all, especially the electrical, because this device invented right before 1900s, you know, Tesla, this violet ray was zapping these, I can't believe I'm saying this, but it was zapping these possessions out of your aura. Like the electrical field would cause a disruption, and the demon would be unseated, just like we're talking about. It would separate. And, you know, sure, it could come right back in. But the point is that it was causing this separation. And to me, that's the key. If you can just get someone to understand, to not identify with that thought.
Okay. This is where a lot of the work is as well. Good luck with that. That's why I call it a miracle. You know, when I'm in meetings and stuff like that, I say things to people that kind of make them shock. I would say trauma is a gift. My alcoholism began with my first drink. And they're like, what? You know, it's this initiation. It's, you know, I'm engaged. That's it. You're going somewhere with it. Yeah, so it's trying to get through to the addict. So you're talking and you're working with new tools, and you're putting them out there just like you are. You're brave. You're talking about Hades not being a place full of bad entities and evil demons and stuff like that. Well, how could you say such a thing? You know, I'm open-minded to that. I wouldn't have been ready to hear that 4 years ago.
Yeah.
I wasn't ready for that. But, you know, back to the ego too. I wouldn't have been ready for that at all either. I was trained that ego is bad. Ego's why, you know. I didn't.
That's how it's the perfect way to create an army of victims, a nationhood of victims is, hey, let's shame the shit out of the ego. Let's end all spiritual talk whatsoever about anything at all. Let's only allow pharmaceuticals and alcohol into the system, and let's just see what happens. You know, and let's have 2 world wars.
Let's just see what happens. Yeah. They knew it was going to happen.
Yeah. Well, let's have 2 world wars in addition to all that.
Yep,
And
that's why
then,
America cannot be great again. I think that's cute. I like your political campaign, America, make America great again. Guess what, guys? It never has been great. It probably was great the day we founded it in 1776. After that, they keep coming at us with depressions, with wars, with all this nonsense. Well, it's not nonsense. These are attacks to prevent what naturally wants to occur in us. You know, that's what maybe it was you mentioned it in one of your live streams about the spirit. This is the natural spirit of us, truth, and me and you naturally are rising, and it wants to be, it needs to be, and they know it. They being, well, that's another conversation. And that's why, yeah, that's why trauma can be a gift. That's why my alcoholism and addiction is not a curse. um that's why I'm not a victim. My mother was a psych nurse her whole life, and my introduction to a lot of this stuff in the pharmacy, I was what, 11 when they diagnosed me with ADD, and I got my first taste of amphetamines, which was Ritalin. I didn't know at the time. I'm just a kid. I'm taking the medication. If I don't take the medication, they're telling me there's something wrong with me.
Yep.
Up until that point, I thought I was doing great. I'm at school. I'm there to make friends, go outside and play recess and do all that stuff. I'm not dumb. I wasn't get my homework done. I wasn't sitting still in class. Kind of had a bit of a, I guess, ego, because I'd stand up for myself. I'd question a lot of things, and they knew exactly how to handle me. But my poor mother, I can look back on it, being a psych nurse. I mean, she really bought into all of it. That was her training. So yeah, there's something wrong with my son. With my mom, it was always, you're always a victim, Aaron. You're always a victim. It was not good for a young boy to hear. And yeah, it launched me on that path of pharmaceuticals. Ritalin was terrible, dude. I used to hide it under my couch, fake take it as a kid. And my dad, God bless him, I think my mom cleaned the house and actually decided to clean under the couch one day, and then there's all the Ritalin underneath the couch, and my dad was not happy. He's like, "You know how much I pay for that? You're supposed to take that." Even he didn't know. So I had to start taking it, because if I didn't, my dad would kick my butt. And it was terrible. Sit in class. It was my first experience. It wasn't later until I did cocaine in my teenage years, and the cocaine was gone. You have an experience we call it geeking. You're coming down. So this is me in late grade school, 6th grade. I'm sitting there in class going, thank you, Ritalin. I'm sitting still, but it's because I'm high off amphetamines. How they let that one slip through. But I think that opened the gate as well for these entities and stuff like that, because that's another experience I can look back on now that I have the tools to maturely look at it. That's when all those thoughts really started coming in. Prior to that, I had natural little boy thoughts, all the good stuff,
well,
huh?
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, no. So I can look back on it. That's when the entities, that's when the thinking, those thinking. So at a very young age, like you said, it's intertwined. You don't know. No one's not telling you. You're sitting in class and you're like, all these thoughts of, well, they've got terms for it now. What is it? Oh, God, I'm looking back. What would they have said then? Aaron's got a low self-esteem. I didn't used to have a low self-esteem until I started taking Ritalin, and you told me something was wrong with me. And those thoughts happen, the way that the kids were clicking back then. I watched the rap come in. I watched all the gangster rap happen in the early 90s, which was interesting. Like the guys I was growing up with in my whole life. One year, I think it was like 6th grade, we're listening to Criss Cross. That's about as far as, come on, make me jump. Next year, they're Dr. Dre and they're gangsters. And I'm like, dude, you live in a middle-class neighborhood. What's going on here? They grabbed onto that, these young boys, man. I guess it was an identity crisis, and poor them. I didn't have to experience that because I was too high on Ritalin. But the thing about the pharmaceutical industry that I also watched was all the new drugs. So I swear I was a guinea pig. I got the Prozac, I got the Wellbutrin, I got it all. My mom would take me to, his name was Dr. Banton. Later in my young adult years, I went to try and find this guy and get my records. He was in Iraq because the whole time he was a military doctor is what I found out. And I thought that was suspicious at the time. So yeah, Dr. Banton, it was walk in there, sit down for 10 minutes. Here, give this to your mom. And you've got a new prescription of whatever. And you're like, I'm supposed to take this. And, you don't get no answers. That for any, okay, I'm 39. And I know maybe someone in this audience, if we do put this out there, will be listening to this. If you're in a position like me where you can be you today, you know who you are, and you've survived something, because it's not just me. There was untold millions of American young boys and girls were going through that at the time. Now it's even more. This is why we homeschool. But yeah, so I started self-medicating with marijuana. I didn't like that. I could do all the amphetamines and the Prozacs and all that stuff, but marijuana, God no. But when I was smoking marijuana as a kid, as a teenager, and I smoked quite a bit, that actually helped. It was good. I smoked marijuana up until I was 18.
Well, do you know why it was good?
No.
Marijuana is its own possession. It's a female.
Yes, talked about this.
Yeah, she wraps her. You could feel it on your skull. She wraps each of her fingers around your skull. She's only going to show you beautiful things, man. She's only going to show you things that are going to make you want her more. And she takes over your aura. She protects it. She's like, this is mine. This is my crop. I'm the pot, and Aaron is planted inside me. And no one else is going to get to you because she's got you. Now,
awesome.
If you want to look into allies versus spirit, I mean, this is why I've been trying to this is why I've pulled Hades up out of the lobster trap and dried it off in the sun to go, let's look at this shit. I know it's got barnacles all over it and it smells bad, but let's look at this, because there's if you can start to understand what's going on, it becomes easier to see, like which part is what. And I'm not the only person who's like, independently, I've noticed others have said the same thing, that a really good defense against demon possession is marijuana. And I'm not saying everyone needs to go out and smoke marijuana, because that's a possession too. That's an ally possession. That's the living spirit of that plant is in the world. We don't see plants as living, though, but it is. It's got its own aura, its own essence. And when you're inhaling that, you're directly putting that into your blood supply. That's a union. You're unionizing with that ally. You're focused on it. Your entire breathing's all about it. You become part of that. She becomes part of you, and the opposite. In a lot of ways, I think that ally uses humans just like these demons do. Once they get inside you, they're able to jack into your endocrine system and experience the world around them. Oh, yeah. Something that they don't get to do so deeply in their own bodies. They're more of a tendency in the ether. We're more of a freaking cathode battery, like a starter, the solenoid, all the equipment's there. So they're able to come in. When we invite them in, they're able to share in this experience of being alive, basically. And that's why so many of these demons are doing what they're doing. Not all demons are quote unquote bad, meaning that some want to make a deal with you in some way. And that's, in a way, that's what marijuana is doing. It's like, I want you to have a high serotonin kick all the time. I want you to be in the moment all the time. I don't want you to think too much about the future or the past. Let's just sit right here in this bubble of time right now. Yeah. That's gonna automatically bring your auric field into this nice tight ball that she can protect. And so while that's happening, nothing else is able to penetrate. Or if it's going to come in, it's going to have to be something that's even more powerful, than marijuana.
It's psychological too, because a lot of these at that age, a lot of these youngsters, then, now, whenever, your experience in public school it's not a good experience. It just isn't. Let's be honest. Public school's terrible. I'm sure there's some schools that are all right out there, but man, it was a horrible experience for me. And when you are, I did the first DARE class. I remember it's like 1988. Yeah, no, I still even have my DARE little workbook, and I'm looking through it. It's funny what they try and teach you, but they're literally lying to you. They're not teaching you anything wisdom or anything of value, because the truth is there's so many boys and young girls that are actually authentic. They're already tapped in. There's information that we have within us that's there, and as we unlock it, just you take your first hit of pot, which is everywhere. Like, they're lying. This is like you said, and I'm not. This is the first time I heard that, so I'm kind of processing it, and I'm looking back. It's been 20 years since I was smoking pot, but I've always known that when I was smoking marijuana as a teenager, that was when I was at my best. I wasn't suffering.
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't, and me and my little friends, everything like that. We didn't, we were out in the woods all the time. I was out in nature. So, but the thing is, by the time you're 18 and 19, if you have a kid or something, you need to get a job.
Mm-hmm.
And guess what? Good luck getting a good paying job when you're smoking pot.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, that's why it's still
Yeah.
possession. It's a symbiotic possession. You might call it that. It's more of a symbiotic possession, like a quasi-friendly parasitic. You're still not you. In fact, a lot of people say you're in a monogamous relationship with marijuana. Cannabis is a monogamous relationship. You're not going to be able.
I'm laughing because I have a friend. He's a recovery coach, good friend. He tries to explain what it's like to get sober with a lot of these heroin addicts. He's like, it's like a bad breakup. You just got to look at it like that. You're just about to go through a really bad breakup with a relationship with someone you love so much, you've had for a long time, but it's very abusive. It's effective. It works for some guys. So.
Yeah. Well, it seems like one thing we keep missing in all of our alchemy is that it's impossible to remove a belief without replacing it with another. Like, at least I feel like it's impossible, because it's too hard to do that. It'd be better to replace the addiction to marijuana with an addiction to trail running. To sacrifice one for the other. To look at all these things as, first of all, embrace the suck. Like, don't pretend like it's not going to suck, but also turn that into, yeah, it's going to suck. I'm sacrificing. This is the alchemy of it. I'm going to sacrifice my relationship with that marijuana because I really miss being able to run 5 miles down the trail. As when we can start to see our own power like that, when we can start to see that we have to replace our beliefs like a muscle. It's going to have to believe in something. And we can't just cut off our arm, our spiritual arm, and go, I don't have an arm anymore. We're going to need, we're going to need to get around. And I realize that I'm replacing an addiction with another addiction, but keep in mind that you can stair step those all you want and eventually get to a place where, if you want to go full Buddhist, nihilist, and, just learn how to not have any desires, fine. Some people do that. I've noticed, though, that they have an addiction.
I like nihilism.
For not being addicted to stuff, which is still an addiction. So, I'm more like engaged. I want to engage in life. So I'd rather just take that and replace it with, well, I'm going to write a book, or I want to do this, or, I want to do that. So
it took me years just what you mentioned. So this is actually where I began. I really was attracted to Tracy Wyman on this area here, but it's that sobriety being everything that this world is got. I'm going to experience it as it is, as pure as I can. And that's my version of sobriety today. Not recovery, just sobriety.
Mm-hmm.
No mind-altering substances, nothing like that. I'm not against them. No, of course not. But I've made a conscious decision. It came about 2 years ago that's really what I'm doing. That's the path I'm on now. And Aaron wants to experience the world and everything he has, to observe, to witness, to really get my senses in tune. It's my higher power. That's my relationship. But that's also the alchemy. Alchemy is very important. So I like what you say. I'm curious because you're so astute and you really do understand a lot of this alcoholism and addiction, but I've never heard you identify as one or
when I was in college, that same girl that, or the same person, the same girl that blew up the light
Yeah.
was in Alcoholics Anonymous, and I was going with her to those meetings.
Wonderful.
I was pretty religious about it. In fact, when we broke up, I was still going to those meetings. I had met a mentor of mine, and I just found him to be just really wise on how psychology works, how people
Yes.
works. And then when I, not that I don't have my own addictions, because, and I'm happy to talk about those. It just happens to be that alcohol isn't one of them. And then after I left college, when I worked in that wilderness camp, man, I learned a shitload there.
Yes, you did.
Just walking around, and I was able to transmute different theories for how to fix this stuff. And I really wish that I knew. I wish I knew now. I wish I could go back temporarily just to experiment with what I know now, just to see if what I think now is true, you know, like to test it in the field and see how that works.
I've heard you say that, James. Wish in one hand, was it wishes for horses? If horses were wishes, beggars would ride.
Yeah.
Don't wish for that. Everything we do is in preparation for something.
Yeah.
So our relationship right now, and why I'm so we can have such a good conversation where I can hear what you're saying without having to say too much. This is really based on this experience that you've had, and you know, it's wonderful. It's good to actually have a good conversation and not have to get too far into it. Don't have to over-explain everything. Like, I really understand what you're saying. You can pick up, you know, someone else's authenticity, and you've got it, especially, I guess, based on your experience at the wilderness. You got fired too, right?
Yeah.
And it sucks. You're like,
Yeah, I've never worked so hard. I was.
And you were good at it.
It was devastating. Yeah, it was devastating to go. I did not want to go, and I just took it as, well, it's because I suck at my job. You know, it's because I wasn't good or whatever. And I would watch those possessions happen. In fact, Ritalin came halfway. That's what was so weird about this, is that I think that's what gave me so much insight. I was there for 6 months, and then Ritalin came. There was no Ritalin when I first got there. 6 months in, we started prescribing Ritalin to all the kids.
No.
And I started complaining on all my charts. I'm not able to do therapy anymore. These kids are not. We're not in conflict anymore.
They're geeked out. I
need conflict, and I would literally write that down. We need conflict.
Yes, we do.
I can't work with these kids unless one of them is going to take a water cooler and just bash the crap out of another one for no reason at all. You're not going to have the spills where you can find, okay, here's that demon. Again, I didn't know it at the time, but it's like, I remember one kid named Squirrel. I would have this being locked in. Like, I would have eye contact with this being. And I was always trying to talk to the person underneath it.
Yes, you were.
But now, man, if I was there now, I would talk directly to that being. I would actually show that being empathy. And I would say, dude, you're stuck inside Squirrel's body. I don't know what the fuck happened to you. I'm really sorry.
Right on.
You can't have Squirrel. You can't. And then I would really push to make Squirrel understand this thought's not your own. Because Squirrel would wake up in the morning and be like, hey, Mr. True, can I make you some coffee? And I'd be like, well, sure, that'd be awesome. And he would brew me really good coffee. And I would watch him. I didn't want him spitting in my coffee. Like, you know, I was like watching, I watched everything they did. That's but seriously, awesome. he like loved making me coffee, and it was good. And then one day another kid makes me a staff. It's like this wormwood freaking cherry staff. Like the worms have crawled inside of it and created these patterns all around it. He peeled the bark off. He shined it up. He cut it just right. It was like the most amazing gift you could possibly imagine. So, and Squirrel looks at it and goes, hey, can I see that, Mr. True? And I'm like, sure. And he takes it and just whack, just splits it in half right on the tree. Like right in front of me. He's making sure that I'm watching. And the whole time he's like, like he's got this Gollum evil grin going. And I'm telling you, that was the possession. Like that was the possession right there. And I really wish that I could go back. When I say really wish, is that's the part of me that's like,
yeah, that you had to get that experience.
yeah.
I mean, I'll tell you this. 1995 to 1997, I was in a boys' home. Okay, I had Mr. Trues. There's a good ones, but they're few and far between. You know, it goes a long way. I'm really glad to hear when that boy made that staff for you, dude. That's something special. That's awesome. You know, and but yeah, you encountered one, you identified it, but you couldn't resolve it, could you? Or is that the experience?
Yeah.
Right? We were
Yeah.
talking about this because that's my experience too, and I think there's like a warrior spirit in us. There's something. Whereas we don't let go to that with that stuff, and it's there, and we're looking, we're watching. I'm listening to you and some of your live streams and other people, and I hear this. That's what I'm looking for, and I hear it, and I'm able to resolve a little bit better. I'm a little bit more confident in my own observations. You know what I'm saying? So don't say you wish you had to get that experience. My experience with these things can get real intense. One of my most intense experiences to date was in an individual who died, and I did everything I could for him. This is a close friend. Just like you said, all that, it's a switch. And this individual, I seen the manifestation of the teeth sharpen. I seen the nose, chin, the eyebrows, and this thing, it told me it was going to kill me. We're going to kill you. You know, he's ours, and all this talk. You're not gonna do this. Just like Jerry talks about.
You plural too. You use plural pronouns too.
So I am not remembering this wrong. Okay, I am not remembering this wrong. I had to hold on to this. It was such an intense. I mean, we got paramedics going on. We got police. You know, Jason died 2 weeks later. This is near. It was intense. When these experiences occur, there's other things going on. So it took me a while. I think I remember started listening to someone like Jay Parker, and I said I really needed to figure out. I mean, I'm calling my mentor, and that's the only person I wanted to tell about this I could trust. He didn't disregard what I experienced, which was wonderful. Thank God for that. Now, because of that experience, I could say I wish I would have known then. I know that I took authority in that situation. There's lots of experiences years up to that point, my own, with other ones, little ones here and there, that put me in a position. This is true, that those entities, they were so upset because I was there.
Over the target. Yep. Over the target.
I was putting a stop to something that they had control over. It's just like any old whatever, and it didn't scare me. I knew what to do. I was doing something else. I mean, part of that experience is me learning what true authority is as well. But you know, so it disturbed me enough to start looking in other areas, paying attention to guys like you. You get it when Jerry comes out with his work a year ago. I mean, he's got my attention. Gives me a lot of hope. You know, this guy he's not lying. So many years later, I'm experiencing these things in little cases, and you're always working with it, right? But it's exhausting. It's exhausting. I don't have the fellowship or the companionship with other men or women who really understand this thing. They'll take it to a certain level. Perhaps we're talking about AA or treatment centers. And that's it. They won't go any further. They're either going to medicate, just say, I can't work with them. They're just too far gone. You know, that's never a case for me. I'm never like, you know, they're too far gone. They're never too far gone in my experience for me. And yeah, so it was exhausting. That's why these conversations are great. That's why, you know, this is a big deal for me, for you guys to have that interview with Jerry. So how do you carry this message to people and not come off as like a crazy wacko, right? They'll go as far as like, they won't deny what you're saying, but it's scary shit. You know, it is scary shit. It gets to a point where you're exhausted in your own life. You have to take a step back for a little while. And here's where I'm at now. I'm going back into this. You know, I made my my attempt in the treatment field, which was last year. I mean, it was my dream job. I left a very good paying job I have now to become a recovery coach is what they called it. It's a really good deal. You get a title, a certified peer specialist from the state. They give you training. It was really good. It was all stuff I already knew. I like literally, I was shocked when I went to this training and I knew this stuff. I could have wrote the book, and it's just from doing my own work, learning what I learned from the treatment center. So that was great. But I get out there and I tell you, I've never been more happy, more me. It's when I get to be me is when I was in those ER rooms. It was with the opiate response team, something I've always wanted. You get an overdose, they're in the ER, they give us a call, we got a 1 hour response time. Boom, here I come. I mean, you ever found that place in your life, James, where you're just like, wow, this is where I get to be me.
Oh yeah.
There is no faking, there is no nothing, and you're accepted here, it works. And I'm not talking about the doctors, I'm not talking about the ER, I'm talking about the individual you're sitting with. And it's rapid response. It's rapid. So you're sitting there with an addict. He just OD'd. We're talking fentanyl overdoses and heroin overdoses and this stuff with a Narcan revival is an extremely traumatic experience. I've had one of my own. So there's a small window of opportunity. But here for the first time, you've got someone sitting in front of you in an ER, and just like you described, there's the addiction or the entities, the obsession. They're just spitting shit at you, and you're just you can sit there. When you're there, it's authentic. There is no planning. There is none of that stuff. You really are being you. And when you see the magic, it's when the addict or the individual sitting in there is like they kind of, you could see the light in them.
Yeah.
Like, you have the ability. One of the most powerful tools we can have is the ability to listen.
Mm-hmm.
Listen. And when you're in that experience, I don't know. It's wonderful. For me, I'm happy. So you do understand when they finally fired me, it was traumatic. I reached out to Stefan Verstappen. Okay. And this was a wonderful experience for me because it was like you said, I was devastated. I expected a lot of trouble. I was told if you're not advocating for your addict, if you're not getting in trouble, you're not advocating for your addict. And I'm like, well, yeah, I've been getting in trouble since day one. But, now that you're telling me I'm a CPS worker, they're like, yeah, we'll cover for you. We'll make sure, you just give us a call. And that was a load of crap. They didn't do nothing. But I was so effective. This is what working with Stefan. He had his own experience. He's like, oh, Aaron, you're too good at what you do. You're too effective. You're not supposed to actually really help people, That's what it was. Middle management is what I discovered in these treatment centers. It is awash in just middle management. No one's
What if it's awash with people possessed? What if those people are possessed by these same entities, but they're just more refined?
What a nice answer for these entities. Jesus, they got their bases covered all over, don't they?
Well, and they've had centuries to build up a pretty big infrastructure too. I mean, they've had centuries to do this.
The Ivory Tower.
Yeah, this is not a new thing. If you look at the white coat ceremony itself, that's a shedding of your own identity to step in the role of doctor. Who's to say that shedding doesn't create some kind of egoic hole in you where a certain spirit, a much more sophisticated spirit, is able to enter you there? And that's why you get so many doctors who cannot even have a fucking conversation about a vaccine injury. Well, like they can't even fucking open their own book and go, yeah, it's right here, $4 billion in damages paid out. Like they can't even read that.
They're not smart. They're not smart.
Not a normal person. This is someone but I'm saying if we look at this in the same way, this would be someone that's being blocked by the voices in his head.
I agree.
To make sure that they're seeing this in the same way, which would perpetuate this entire system. It would perpetuate prisons. It perpetuates you because you get fired. I get fired. Just like Jerry. So many times Jerry was denied things that he wanted to try.
Yeah.
Like he couldn't even bring in a violet ray device. I mean, something that you use at a skin care clinic right now. You can go to skincare, and get these little shocks that happen in your skin.
What to
And
tell there? They know.
yeah, and you can't bring that in. That's why I'm saying it's got to be this. I don't mean to be like the entire world's possessed, but the entire world could be possessed. And unless we're seeing it, unless we're willing to actually look at it, we would remain this way, completely ignorant. And that comes back to what you were saying about listening. Because if I'm talking to an addict and I understand now that there's a person inside, and then there are all these voices that are surrounding them, by me understanding that, I'm empathically sending through my face to them, here's what reality is. They're seeing that too, and they're able to use that as a tool to separate, to breach off, and to have their core again. And if you can just get their core accessed, this is why there's like a 2-step shock therapy process, where it's like, step 1, you have to like shock all the spirits off you, and then step 2 is you have to reinforce that ego like super quick.
Cool.
So they're not going to be taken over again, because it's always going to come in the same way. That's why an alcoholic can be dry for 4 months and still have the exact same vulnerability. It never changes. Why? Because they never actually healed their ego. No. And maybe the reason why they didn't heal their ego is because they thought the only way I can get rid of this spirit is I have to shave off my ear. I have to shave off my shoulder, because they're associating with it. They feel like that's them. So they're not able to see that this is a separate entity, that this is a separate energy that's inside me. So,
and that's why I love it. Man, you're good. You're really good. You're the alchemy talk. But that's my experience. I lived in that sober living for 2 years. Just like you described. It got replaced. I had an opportunity for Aaron to build a core self. We talked about building foundations. Putting recovery first was building a foundation. Mm-hmm. At the recovery house, they just hammered it in you. And that means before God, before anything, recovery must come first. And you're like, you guys are crazy. But it's just like you said, I got that shock. I got that separation. And I really instilled in me, I got to be me for the first time in my life, really. But it's not overnight. It takes years. So my experience, I can only do so much in the ER room. I've played my role, whether I'm in the ER room or wherever. And these poor men, these poor women, it sucks to have to do the work, be so successful, and then let them off into a Suboxone clinic where they're just going to get in front of that white coat who's going to be hammering them with medications. It's tragic. It sucks. It's exhausting, because it really does take a lot of work.
What if you could heal someone instantly? Like
you can, but not for every day. Sooner or later, they have to take on the torch themselves and know how to apply those tools for themselves.
Right, but here's where the truth comes in, because if they don't understand that there's an egoic attack happening with whatever this spirit is, if they've never even considered that, if they've always considered, I'm being attacked internally by my own deep desires that are deep-seated in my intestines. Instead, if they're looking at, I'm being attacked by this auric field that's zooming around my head like a fish. That fish is not me. That's a slippery thought that's swimming through my head. It doesn't belong to me. But you can't unown your endocrine system. You can't unown your genes. But we're telling them, no, alcoholism is hereditary, or alcoholism is, it's built into you. That it would seem like that would be the perfect way to make that a lifelong illness, because you're associating with it. You're claiming that this part of my shoulder that has this possession inside of it is me. When actually, no, what it is we've got this sort of leprosy, that's this demon possession that's occupying your skin. And until you understand that there's two separate entities here, you would be your worst advocate for healing, because you're constantly thinking, no, this is me. So if I'm going to heal, I'm going to have to attack myself. I'm going to have to fight myself if I'm going to heal this, which means I'm going to have a ball gag in my mouth. I'm going to have to make sure that I never hear these words. I'm going to have to make sure I never walk into a bar. I'm going to have to make sure I never go down this old street or see my old girlfriend.
That terrible.
All the old triggers is how you're carrying that spirit with you wherever you go, because you've never been taught. Never have you been taught that there's a Hades, B, it's all around us,
The
and
pit.
C, these spirits are there, but they're not you.
So that's another aspect to this. I recognize that quite early, that there's spirits around me. I could sense things. I don't know why I just got lucky on that one. No one really taught me. That's one thing on my own that I held on to. Well, I would go back to my own meth experience with meth. Ooh, dude, anything that was reflective is where they were. I'm talking real people in a mirror world there, in a reflection of a car, in a mirror, anything that had a reflection. And that was the furthest I've ever taken it.
Wow.
That was intense. So that's, again, when you guys, Jerry and all them, I'm glad I got that experience and I don't ever want it again. But knowing that, I know that they're always around. The night of the crusher, the shadow paralysis. That's another key experience. So I did what Jerry did. I'm in detox. I'm talking to these guys, and I started asking them questions about my own experiences, just kind of feel it out. And one of the no-nos for me is you got to be real careful. I learned this quickly as you talk about those shadow people, those the night paralysis, shadow attacks, chokings, those things. That will, if a guy's not ready for that, if you're going to talk about, he will shut you down. Don't talk about that stuff. I don't want, no. So I learned that real quick. If we were to have a conversation about that, but that's almost with every addict that I've ever worked with. If I developed a relationship, has had that experience, and I'm like, that just, made my own experience even more. So that was early recovery.
That's why Hades is painted. This is exactly why Hades is painted bad. Because the second you start that conversation with somebody, they're instantly in this, oh my God, so there's like this black pit of
they shut down.
Yeah. Instead of what if they were brought up their whole life going, here's what happens when a spirit dies that doesn't know it's dead. It ends up lingering in this world, and this is the spirit world all around us. And anytime we have displaced bones, and think about it, the catacombs under Paris, the catacombs under Rome, the catacombs in London, the Native American mounds, like serpent mounds.
Koki over
here in America. These are all really could easily be these same kind of dark creatures, these shadow figures. The Civil War Chickamauga battlefield, where I grew up, has the green eyes walking around. Like these same spirits are everywhere, but we're constantly telling ourselves, because we don't believe in the ether, this is a biggie, because we believe in this vacuum of space, we have this mental construct, this psychic construct, that we're in a giant vacuum that won't even hold sound. So there's no way it would hold like a spirit. None of that's true. That's the materialism ends up putting horse blinders on you, because you're not able to see that there's a living Hades. And the second you do start to see the Hades, you're instantly thrown over by Disney and these scary ass thoughts of, well, no, Poltergeist is going to suck me through their TV, and then it's going to rape my mom, then it's going to do my dog.
That
kind of
traumatized me as a child. That poor girl.
Well, that's why it's there. Think about how all those are paying off now to all of the addicts that are around, because we're not able to talk about that. That's why maybe the way to cure this is the first conversation you have with someone is not even about them. It's more about, hey, check out this book, 30 Years Among the Dead by Carl Wickland. This is really interesting, because here he is. Here's a guy, and what I like about the book is it's like one guy's like, yeah, I lost my wife as we were traveling over from England to move to America, and the ship wrecked, and there was a drowning, and I was haunted by my wife for 20 years because she didn't know that she had drowned. Like, approach it more from, all these spirits are just normal, regular people. All these, Hades isn't full of demons. Well, it is, but we've repainted we painted demons wrong. The word demon literally means genius. It means divine spirit. That's what the word used to mean. If you look it up in Greek, the word demon, the word demon just means genius.
Or daemon.
So what we're looking at is a world full of people that are just like you, just like me. People that have trauma, that have goals in life, that have things that they want.
Yeah.
They're dying, but because no one told them what happens after they die, they don't know they're dead. they still think that they're living. If you approach it, if we can approach healing from that standpoint first, explaining first that there's a spirit world and it's not a bad thing, then, only then, could this healing trick start to be, which is, hey, those thoughts aren't you. These thoughts that you're seeing today aren't you. And literally that could be all it takes, because that would cause that disassociation.
This is the experience when someone tells you that for the first time, and you're like, really? Because I'm exhausted.
Yeah.
You know, and you have to have an authority. You've really got to know yourself. There's a blessing in having the experience yourself, because when you do say it, you better say it with authority, and you better say it with some kind of conviction. Because there is that was my experience. And I've had a lot of that. Really? I'm like, yeah, those thoughts aren't, I will be done. I will not mind be done. This, you know, so it's relief. It's a beautiful experience. It is. And, you know, you're talking, James, this is the YouTube community. It's not just the YouTube community, but what I've been able to add to my work is into my own service work, we'll call it. I'm working with addicts and just doing what I do is I get to tell people about James True and his book. I get to tell people about Neil Kramer, or I get to tell people about these lessons like Mark Passo. He talks about violence versus force, and you guys add to my toolbox and to do that stuff. And it just, it does, it helps you. And, you know, you're not just some crazy guy. There's more people talking about it.
Mm-hmm.
2011, no one was talking about this stuff. Really they were, but not like this. And it's all, you know, guys like me and you had to have your own experience. You had to have your own trauma. You had to have your own separation. The house had to burn down. You had to go through the blackening.
Yeah. Well, like with my marriage is really what taught me more than anything, because there was a trigger when wine was drunk, this entity would come out, and it would emerge like within 5 minutes. And
Mr. Hyde.
yeah, and like 7 minutes before, I was the greatest husband ever born. You know, I had just made the maddest, most awesome dinner ever. The green beans were perfect, and now I need to leave because I've upset her. And I mean, I'm going to be gone for 7 days now. I'm going to be thrown out of the house for 7 days now. And it's the whole time I'm like begging, can I come home? Da, 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 da. And then it's, you're in a relationship with two different people.
Yeah.
You've got a dragon, and then you've got your wife. And the whole
your
time,
wife?
yeah. And that's why I keep saying I would, you know, to be honest, when I hear myself say, I wish I could go back, because I never say that. It's because of that, man. It fucking sucks that I couldn't save my marriage, that I couldn't solve that. You know, it sucks that I really wanted that to work, man. And
yeah.
it almost killed me, because I just kept saying, I'm not going to leave. I'm not going to leave. I'm not going to leave. And then that turned against me pretty bad. And then that's when I've never seen someone so violent in my life. And I think it's because this entity saw me see it. Well, like it understood that I was getting closer.
You had to go.
That's why it was throwing me out all the time, because it was like, this fucker's onto us. We're going to have to step up the game, because I'm not letting go of this chick. It was kind of like how it was saying it. And that's why it was constantly escalating.
How long ago was that?
3, 4, no, more like 4 or 5 years, I guess now.
You're a lot stronger, a lot wiser than you were 3, 4, 5 years ago.
Fuck yeah. No, well, I really wanted to die, actually. I've never been in such a deeper, dark depression ever than when that was.
That's a good experience.
When we left, that spirit had literally sucked all the life force out of me. And it created a spell where every day I was going to wake up and send it more life force, while she was out, you know, in other relationships, having other, you know, doing other men, you know. I mean, it was just a constant supply being sucked from me for years.
Sick people say sick things. Sick people do sick things. Healthy people say healthy things. Healthy people do healthy things. And, you know, I think I've had a lot of people. I've hurt more people than have hurt me when I was in my alcoholism and addiction. It took many years really understanding myself and debt separation. So I still will own that they were, you know, those were my thoughts. That's who I was. I really identified with all that, you know, and that Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde, dude, you want to talk about, yes, that was me. I was your wife. You know, I could look back now and I go, okay, that's not me anymore, but I don't disown it. You know, there was nothing my wife or anybody else could have done for me. Really.
Yeah.
What it really took was another alcoholic, a man who really he knew himself well enough. I'm going to say my mentor wouldn't go as far as we would say that he knew he was talking to an entity versus the actual person, but because of his experiences and the work that he did, he could claim authority. And that's what they did. It took authority in my life when I couldn't, and then they gave it back to me. But there's nothing anybody could have done for me except for a guy like that. You know, my mentor had to have he had 16 years of recovery, really, before I met him, of experience of working with addicts and doing this thing. He was the guy who got through to me, you know. So fellowship has a lot to do with it. It took a lot of people, a lot of work, and my own work. So, I mean, what could you have done, you know?
Well, if it wasn't for that, I wouldn't have written my book. I wouldn't.
There you go.
I mean, seriously, there's no way I would have written. I wouldn't have seen it. It was when she decided to tell everybody I was beating her. That was when I really noticed about mind control, because I noticed that everyone was just believing her. It was just because there's so much blind empathy around, and because charisma is such a powerful tool, that it became impossible to not want to believe her. I mean, she's a woman, first of all, and so there's already a dynamic there. But it would be so awkward for someone to even doubt her story. And that's really what put me in the darkest depression. Although she hurt, don't get me wrong, it was the way the community responded. Like the community was enabling us never to see, like it was enabling the disease more because of the blind empathy, because of the mind control, because of the way it was working out. I mean, I would be as calm as I could and explain, hey, are you willing to be the conduit for a conversation between me and my wife now? And people would literally say, no, I don't think that's a good idea. And it's like, okay, so you're gonna call me a wife beater, but you're also not going to engage with me at all about anything that's happened between us. You know, you don't want to listen to me. You don't want to hear my side. You don't want to convey a message.
That's traumatic. When people don't believe your truth, it takes everything out of you.
I had to chop all of my connections. It was the only way I could survive.
Well done.
I had to literally just every single person in this town that I live in, I've just had to go, none of these people are my friend, and it fucking sucks. And that's when that's really what woke me up, is I noticed all these people they look beautiful. They have smiles on their face. They pretend like they're nice all the time. And I'm not saying they're not nice, but honestly, they're just led by this blind empathy, by what is in fashion right now. So I can still go home and deal with my own demons, because I don't want to invest too much into this. It was all about, well, if I'm going to side with you, it's going to cost me a lot socially. Or if I'm going to side with you, it's going to be awkward.
Prana economy. That's good stuff.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. The prana economy was too expensive for anyone to go, maybe James is telling the truth. Like, none of those people could do that. But I also learned that that's kind of how her demon was finding people to be friends with that she could control that way. So these weren't even really my friends. I mean, obviously, because if they were, they wouldn't have done that. So
the work that you're doing, the things that you're putting out there, I mean, this is new stuff. This is a new approach for a lot of us, even me, with all my experience. And if I could see you go anywhere with this, and me too, because you're adding new tools, new ways to look at it, I'm going to grow from this. I'm going to be able, because even I don't want to go back. It's expensive. It takes a lot. I got 3 children. I've got a career now. I've got to pay the bills. But then again, I do have a desire to do this work, which we're talking about now. It's going to cost a lot, but I need to know that I'm going to be more effective and have authority over these entities, because that's what we're dealing with.
Yeah.
Aaron's not. I have my higher power. Okay, Jesus Christ. That's me. That's my Father. That's who I work with. The Gospel of Thomas. anything that's in the Bible, I'm open-minded to, I'm listening to, and it's powerful stuff, the prayers and all that stuff. That's me. I'm not going to go praising Jesus around. I'm not going to explain to everybody that that's the work that I'm doing, that I'm dealing with. But I need to know that when I am, that I'm going to be effective, that I will have authority, and I can accomplish this and do this work. And from what I hear from you and everything, you know, I picked up on this earlier. I mean, you really are going to pick up a torch, James. There's going to be time, I mean, not long from now, if you're not already, where you really are standing in authority, integrity, honor, and all these awesome. You've done a lot of work to have this, so have I. And you're going to help a lot of people. You're mapping. You're out there. You're blazing a new trail. You're doing the work, and you won't see it until we never do, until we look back. You sent a video to me today from Streetwise Recovery. I saw myself 4 years ago. I never saw it then, dude. It was beautiful. I really appreciate that. Me and my son, that was authentic.
Yeah.
A lot of people did a lot of work, and then another trauma, I'm thinking I'm going this way. Nope, Aaron, you're going that way, and but here we are having this conversation. But I see you, James, definitely. You already are doing it.
Well, my goal's always been to get back to the campground. I've always wanted that campground again, where no one can fire me. And
yes, yeah,
I
right?
want to do it. I want to do it where I don't want it to be anything official. I don't want it to be an official treatment center at all.
It's
And
officially.
I really think that I could develop a program, like a 6-week program, that would. I wish I could explain. Man, I would get in this flow state with those kids because we're out in the woods. I would get in this flow state, and like, just as an example, one day I was like, none of y'all have names anymore. Let's go. And we left the campfire. We walked out in the woods, and we looked at the campfire from outside. We were like outside the perimeter of our own campsite, looking at an empty campfire. And we were like, you guys, if you don't shed what's happened to you before, you're never going to be able to rebuild. And this ceremony just came out of all of us, where we named each other these Indian names, and some of them were hilarious. Like, some of them were, one, Dale loves to joke, and so he was like, I'm 2 rabbits fucking, and like, that was his name, But it's like I wrote it. I didn't like say, no, Dale, you have to have a serious name. I was like, okay. I didn't see that coming, but okay. And it's, next thing I know, when they're graduating, I'm giving them their name back. Like, I'm going, Squirrel, you've earned something from all of us. Here it is. It's, and I can't say his name, but it's.
No, you don't.
Here's your name.
Yes.
We would like give him back his identity. And it's just a tiny example, but we were using like face paint. We would take like char out of the fire and like paint our faces. But it was always this alchemical experiment of like, I don't know why I'm doing this, but I want to make Dale come out with me, and we're going to go dig up frogs right now from the marsh. And we're just going to talk about that. And he's going to hate it. It's going to be dark. He's going to have his feet deep in the mud, and he's going to be looking for sounds, not pictures. And as I'm out there with him, I'm like, why am I doing this? Why am I doing this? But then that same Dale guy, well, like years later, I've got 2 kids that are still in contact with me. Like, later, he'll be like, do you remember that night when you did this thing with the frogs? And I'm like, no. But it's like, you get into this flow state, and I really think that flow state is how all of us are supposed to be living, like, all the time.
I try to describe that to you in psych wards, and then taking guys to detox, just doing it. It's a flow state, and it is. It's in the now. It's
pure alchemy. Yeah, it's pure alchemy.
Pure alchemy.
And I think you're picking up on what someone needs, because you want to help. You just have a natural desire to want to be effective and want to be constructive. Yeah. And your intuition starts popping out, and you're like, try this, try this, try this.
The most helpful I'll ever be is by actually doing this thing myself first. That's an axiom I came up with because, like you said, I had the same question. Why am I doing this? Hell, people were asking me, why are you doing this, Aaron? Why do you go to such great lengths to do all this? Why would you even bother? So, yeah. But you know what? We're talking about these individuals. You know, you're literally talking about me as I'm a 16, 15, 14-year-old boy in a boys' home. I wish I wish I was in a place with a guy like you. Oh my God, I just said it. I wish. I I got pictures of me in the boys' home, and I'm in American Indian face makeup. It was Halloween, and I painted everyone's face. You know, I did that, and I was trying to tap into that stuff naturally.
Yeah, exactly.
The archetype is so important, and I was naturally, organically doing it. In my first, I took on the name Exabiche from a film called Dead Man. I had the soundtrack, Neil Young. I didn't have the film, but I had seen it, so I listened to the soundtrack over and over again because music is very healing. And incorporated in it is the actual dialogue of the film. But this Exabiche character, I really grabbed onto that archetype just on the audio, and then I watched the film. And William Blake it was all right there for me at this perfect time. But I took on that American Indian name. Why am I doing this? Doesn't matter. Flow state, I was doing it, and the benefit I got out of it. So many years later, I hear this James True guy talk about archetypes, you know, because I'm still trying to figure out what was going on there, why it was so effective. You know, I had enough confidence in myself to at least go with it, not worry about what everyone else was thinking. So yeah, I made that attempt as a teenager. Good job, dude. Good job. There was no books written about this stuff, really.
Well, and how many times do books actually just really fuck us up? I can't tell you how many times someone said to me in my past, well, I'm shutting you down because you haven't read enough. Like, I don't really care what you're going to say because you need to be reading more. No one should know. No one your age should know anything. So stop pretending like you know something. Stop bringing things to the fire, basically. You know, there's only one fire tender, and it's the system. You know, it's not you. And that's another piece of really therapeutic healing is that I always knew who needed to tend the fire that night. When we had a group fire, all of our healing was around group fire. Like we would heal during the day, but group fire was the big shit.
Yeah.
I always knew who to assign like fire tender that night. Sometimes it was 2 kids, but that was such an honor to hold that because the kid's like, oh, I'm going to build the fire for us tonight. I'm going to keep it lit. I'm going to keep it going all night. Even that is just such a freaking powerful archetype to type into. And to watch an 11-year-old build a bonfire is so powerful. Like to watch someone that little be able to make a fire that big and to see that kind of pride as he's poking it through the night, you know, and making sure everything's okay.
I'm going to build a fire with my son tonight. And yeah, it is. It's inspiring, dude. So you're not going to find that in the book. Nobody's going to go, you know, with a badge or a code or any uniform or any title is going to tell you really officially that's what you should be doing.
Yep.
Some people will, but they're not going to off the books, you know. That's God bless you, James.
God bless you too, man. God bless you too.
So I need to build a recovery house in Jefferson County. I don't know if I should have said the county I live in. Everyone's got Jefferson County, but there isn't one here. We're like the #1 meth capital. So I've made many attempts, and it seems like, you know, I'm not going to say I wish. I've learned so much from them, right? So I think we have the same desire. I just want to build this place, open it, and how am I going to do it? You just do it. You know, move forward. You've got a camp spot. We just inspire each other. I hope I inspire you to get this. Man, do it. If you need help, give me a call. I need someone to talk to. I'll come visit. I'd love to.
Yeah. I've been working on it. I mean, I've wanted this my whole life. I've never not wanted this. But I've always been encountered in, I tried software. I've tried to make money through my life so I could, you know, if I make enough money, I could buy a campground.
Isn't that weird? That's limiting me. I don't know why I'm having a problem with this. And I'm not accepting money from the government. Aaron ain't getting fired this time. You know, that's kind of why, if anything gets me down, it's that. It's like when I'm going through the truth movement, I'm watching people like get mad at me because I'm not supporting the narrative that there's a secret white knight that's here to save us. And meanwhile, the people that are supporting that,
they're pre-selling books for like $250,000. And I'm looking at that going, there's my campground right there. Like I could, if I was that dude, I would have a campground right now. And they're not buying campgrounds with this money.
They're not buying campgrounds with the money.
No, they're not. They're buying. One guy bought a billboard in Times Square.
Really?
He took the down payment that could have gone into this alternative college campground thing and bought a fucking billboard in Times Square. And the billboard was like, QAnon's great. Yay, team. And it's like, that was his punch back at the machine, was to literally go up to the machine and give it all of its money and say, yeah, I would like to purchase some advertising from you, please.
You know how many people I put into detox right off the street in the way that without making soap and candles? That's the most effective I've ever been. And once they saw how effective that was, and I almost bought into it. I almost bought into it. Everybody, they started coming in. They're like, "Oh, this is great. We support you." Not like the people who've been supporting you organically from the beginning. All those other people start coming. People that do fundraisers and stuff like that. I almost fell for it. They almost got me. It was very alluring, and you know, the only reason it closed was because of the passing of my friend Matthew. And but I helped more people just from making soap and candles in my basement, which I still have it. Then, you know, it was independent. So maybe there's something there for you.
Well, the dragons that I've made, you know, I've made like 6 dragons around like South America and America. Every time I build one of those dragons, people that need help come. Like kids I've never met before, usually in their 20s.
Yeah.
Come, and for 2 weeks we're building this dragon. Like I've already seen the therapeutic program at work, but we're taking that dragon to a festival, and that festival is covered in psychedelic drugs. So I'm not able to win. When I build those dragons, I don't win. I end up losing all those kids because we get to the festival and the demons come out again. Why? Because there's all the drugs everywhere. This is why I want a campground, because on the campground, I can have a sign up front that says no vampires. And that'll just explain everything. It'll be like, it's like, well, I'm sorry, here's why we can't do drugs, because here's the vampiric nature of this. Here's the vampiric nature of that, you know, and you could say here, but this is how group fire's clean. This, you know, this is how this is going to work. I couldn't say that to a kid that I convinced to help me drag and cut all this bamboo out of the forest. He wants to go to that festival and do drugs and meet beautiful girls and you know, and dance. And I mean,
you can't compete with that. We're not trying to.
There's no way I could compete with that. Exactly. But I saw the therapeutic system at work, and the people that were helping me build this dragons, they were like, man, this is like really fun. Like, I've never had this kind of fun before. And I'm like, you're damn right. There was the alchemy, that they were responding to the alchemy that was happening.
It is the alchemy.
And that's what the campground's all about, because it's away from society. I'm able to create that alchemical bubble, you know, on 20 acres or whatever. That's an easier spell to maintain. That's an easier state, you know, of being to maintain around that area versus, you know, when I was working out of a gas station for a while, which is great, but it's like I only had this little space, and these people were going home at night, and we were going to the festivals, and all the drugs were there.
Yeah, you can create that bubble.
Yeah.
You know, I'm sure you already have. And so, I mean, back to inspiring each other. So, yeah, I mean, I got somewhere I'm going here in the next month. You know where that is. And, you know, when I get back, I think that's really where I need to put my focus in, because we can do this. You know, hearing Jerry, you, so many others out there. I really appreciate you giving me this opportunity to talk to you, dude, because I'm going to walk away.
I've been wanting to talk to you for a while. I'm glad. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm not always real life, you know, I'm not always feeling like I want to talk anyway. You know, this is just happened to be a really good day. I spent it with my son. We went out and shot bow and arrow, protege of mine. He's done really well. And then I had something to look forward to. Talk to you, James, that interview you put out with Jerry. I've been really wanting to hear more. I don't know if I wanted to hear more from Jerry. I wanted to hear an authentic conversation with somebody like yourself. And it was a great interview. So, yeah, man, you give me hope. It's funny. It's not just, there's others out there like you and me talking about the same stuff where it's not a campsite, alchemical school, hermetic school, these more organic things that they really are driven to do. Why? Well, I have a sneaking suspicion that throughout mankind's history, when we were at our best, these are the small little tribal institutions that have always been in place. And what do they always go after? You know, I like what you were talking about the prohibition. I never kind of looked at that. I knew there was something wrong there, and then you're like, you dickheads.
Yep.
Really? You know.
And that was World War One and World War II right after that. So it all just fed into it. It was fucking brilliant black magic, really. Like I have to say that because it's just like every decade they had something else. Okay, step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4, and here we are.
World War One's so fascinating. I wouldn't even be here. That's how my grandfather and my grandmother met. My grandfather was in Europe fighting World War One.
Wow.
His Doc, his best friend in the army, was my grandmother's little sister. They started writing, fell in love with each other, crossed the sea, get married. Here we are. It's weird. So how can World War One be such a bad thing? It's not a. I'm not gonna. We're gonna take that approach. We're gonna step outside the box. It is. What I'm trying to say is, here I am out of World War One. You know, boom. You know, what do you guys got for us now? Because you can't. You want to bring a World War III on? Really? You want to bring a Civil War on? Do you sure you want to do that this time? Because after World War One, World War II, here we are. You can't put this fire out.
Yeah.
Why don't you just step aside and let nature, God, human beings do what they naturally want to do? You know, if you want to go the Hades thing, I don't, you know, sooner or later, and it's already happened, we're going to master ourselves and we're going to come back even stronger than we've ever been before.
Yep.
And then you won't even have an opportunity to have any kind of possessions whatsoever. You won't have access to this world whatsoever because you just didn't have any of your own inhibitions. You wanted to have it all. Sorry, man, it ain't yours to have in the first place because I'm in between heaven, hell. This body, this temple exists in between. This is what I'm here for. It was created for us to grow, move on. Another soul comes in. I don't know. I think that's pretty close to what it is. You know, we're aware of the alchemy. We're aware of all that stuff. Guys like me and you can tap into this just naturally, find the information we need. You know, I just went on a little rant. Sorry.
No, it's. I agree with everything you're saying, and I don't think that this world is necessarily. If you start to look at it like the spirit world stuff, death doesn't become this tragedy anymore.
It's not.
It becomes something totally different, and that's. I'm still trying this Carl Wicklund book. I'm still trying on thinking about life this way. It's really been moving me. I don't know where it's going to take me, but it's been.
Well, if it's there in front of you, you got to have some kind of confidence. That's what it's there for. It's like, hey, you're ready for this, James. Boom.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, like right now, I'm really thinking a lot about Tracy Twyman because she passed, and it was not a good passing. In fact, now I really think that I think she was possessed by the same. This sounds so crazy, but the same being that got Isaac Cappy went after Tracy Twyman, and I only know that because she was looking at his death, and this guy named Jamie that owns this campground, ironically, that Isaac was near. Tracy found out, and right after Isaac jumps to his death, Tracy goes too. And I since I've been thinking about this, I am picturing in my head, this sounds so crazy, but I'm picturing in my head, Tracy could be like around here right now, wanting people to know, this is not how I died. What actually happened was this other entity. And
yeah, I heard you talking about an experience, and I knew who you were referring to.
I would like to, I wouldn't even like to. It's just, these are the things that I'm thinking a lot about now. Like, how does this, if this works?
So we have, all of a sudden, we have an intimate relationship with death. Okay. Not somebody else's version of it. Not yours. Your experience with it. It could be just like what we're talking about. You could be holding an individual's hand when he draws his last breath.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. If you're fortunate enough to experience a beautiful experience like that, whatever it is, I will tell you now, consider it an opportunity to be kind, be there for someone, guide them. I've done it, guide them spiritually and all that stuff. But what we're talking about here is an intimate relationship with death. How to don't disregard your intuition. Don't disregard. Don't. It is crazy, but it doesn't mean it's not real.
Well, it also answers it. Before I thought about this, I would have 12 jars on the shelf, and 8 of them I could explain through multiple personalities, but I have to explain how all these personalities are traumatized first to insert them, and it never's really made a lot of sense. Glancing at it now, all 12 of these jars make total sense to me now. Like, all the evidence that I've ever looked at is like, in fact, something that hits me the most is when I was reading about ancient Egyptian culture.
Yeah.
They didn't have a word for dying. They called it westing.
Yeah, they did, didn't they?
They called it westing. And that's freaking fascinating, man, when you start to think about this, because in fact, today as I was driving, I went to the grocery store. I'm walking around and I'm thinking about Tracy, and I'm asking myself, am I thinking about Tracy right now because Tracy is like right here? Like, is she the person that's saying, hey, James, you're onto something, or, is she saying, James, you're a stupid fuck, you got it all wrong, it's this way. I'm not even trying to say that I'm right. It's just that now I'm looking at this from a totally different perspective, something I would never look at before, because I've always owned my thoughts. I've always just said, no, those thoughts are mine. All that's mine. This is my own programming. I've been programmed from a young age to have a scapegoat complex, blah, blah, blah. It's, like I said, it's alchemy, where I'm re-looking at every single thing, and it's a blessing. It's a huge blessing. I don't even know where it's going to end up, but it's fascinating to at least explore and try and figure this out.
We don't, because men like you and me, for the first time in our lives, we're not afraid of the unknown.
Mm-hmm.
Not only are we not afraid of the unknown, it kind of excites us a little bit. It is the mystery of this world. For the first time in our lives, I mean, we're supposed to be adults, right? But we know that there's going to be something there. It's going to be a new tool, a new lesson. Everything's in preparation. Is it really going to be the unknown when we walk into unknown, or there are going to be things on our journey? Because so far, James, I'm getting all this stuff that, sounds crazy, but here I am. I'm telling you, I'm not afraid to die, because I don't recognize death like you do. It's a completely different, I understand you have your version of it. I was with my father when he passed away last year, and he said, I don't want to die. Or I'm afraid to die. I don't want to die. Like, that was his last, and I couldn't take that fear away from him. I could be there for him. Wasn't going to try. I knew that once my father passed, and I did have experiences. He came visit me in dreams. Those dark shadow entities came about. It was gnarly, man. So I went to work with those guys again. But it really, what my dad was able to teach me is, that's not going to be my experience. I'm not going to not have my own conception, a healthy one, of what my journey into the unknown is going to be. You understand? Mm-hmm. So, I mean, that may be a big problem for a lot of people.
It has to be. And that would explain why there's so much more trauma. There's more psychic trauma around this, because no one understands how this works. I'm going to put this up on the screen again, just in case someone missed it, but I can't say enough how much I recommend reading this book. Yeah. It's 99 cents on Kindle. It's a great read, and it's just a constant look at case after case after case.
Addiction, manic depression.
I'll tell you, after you look at this, you can come back and look at these other look at other experts. They're going to say the exact same thing this guy says.
Probably.
exact same. I've already checked. It's not even like this is one kook, you know, surrounded by all these other people that see it different. It's not that. There's a lot of people that see this the same. In fact, a lot of hospice workers see this exact same phenomenon where there's, 3 days before there's a visit to the bed and all these people are seeing relatives that have passed. Some of these relatives have passed. One case in particular that blew me away, an old man saw his sister. He saw his parents had already passed, and then he saw his sister too. He didn't know that his sister had passed. They didn't tell him that his sister died 5 days beforehand. They didn't want to shock him. They didn't want her death to freak him out. So they weren't going to tell him that she died. But here he is on his deathbed talking to his sister. It's like all these different cases are showing you all this evidence that there's, I'm going to call it Hades again, but that there's this underworld that's all around us, and it's only under because we're pushing it down. We're pushing this stuff down instead of actually acknowledging what's happening around us.
You ever
That's why
experience of salvia?
Say what?
Salvia delvinorum, whatever. The salvia.
No.
You ever smoke that or have an experience with that? Salvia
No.
Because what you're describing right there is the high you get from salvia.
Oh, wow.
Disturbing. Yeah. And that's another entity experience I had.
I'm going to look that up because that's right up the alley with the marijuana stuff about these guys being entities.
It's intense.
Allies, I mean.
I do not recommend, don't you dare, James. Don't you touch that stuff.
No, I said look it up.
Look it up. Because I wasn't prepared for it. But just like you described with the Hades and the going down, that's what it is. And a lot of other people you hear described have a similar experience. I had a huge dose of it. So I got sent. I even disturbed the people around me. But those entities and being sucked down. That's what it was.
There's so many verses in the Bible where Jesus is necromancing demons. Like I stopped counting after 20. I screenshotted at least 20 of them. And not only that, but he was...
There's a tau cross. It's Thigh's wheel. And that's also part of my experience of dealing with these entities is when I took on the tau cross. And that's St. Anthony casting out demons. That's another St. Anthony the Hermit. And I can tell you, it works. It's very effective. And that's how I was able to build a relationship with when I say Jesus Christ, archetype, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Here's the deal, man. When I'm dealing with these things and my experiences, it's about authority. I think what St. Anthony the Great, or the Hermit, the story, his first saint was after his battle with these demons, these Satan is what he said, but it's a good story. At the end, he literally said, if you had any authority over me, you would only have sent one. And he already did. It was his only begotten son defeated these entities. So he said about casting out demons throughout Egypt because they were plaguing the land. And he didn't want to. He was like, no, I want to be a hermit and in my solitude. But now God's like, you got to get out there, man, cast out demons. And that's what he did. So that's what why was I so attracted to that in 2010 before I got sober? Ever since I took on this, it's grown. So that's another tool. Look that up.
I do. I wrote it down because this is what my book's about. It's about these. It's really the technology of belief. That's why Jesus is such a powerful archetype. That's why archetypes work the way they do. There's an anatomy to them. There's a technology to them.
Definitely.
And it all comes back to our belief. It all comes back to our ability to charge off that symbol. I think a lot of it has to do with the serotonin also. We're secreting serotonin, and when we get into this archetypal state, we're switching, and melatonin's starting to come in, and then that's where the archetype's going to really emerge because it's this dream state. That's what melatonin does. It regulates your dreams. So you're literally having this secretion in your pineal gland, secreting the adrenaline of consciousness.
Milk and honey.
Exactly. And it's the symbolism is so powerful. I was blown away the other day because Exodus 33.3, three threes,
Yeah.
Exodus 33.3 is that verse, the land of milk and honey.
Yeah.
That's what makes me think about the third temple. The 333 is the third temple. All these bad guys are trying to recreate the third temple in Israel, when the whole time the third temple's right here. It's right here. That's the third temple. And that's why I have so much new hope right now for what's happening around the world about this great awakening, because it's the ability to transmute this idea. Instead of it being a new world order, it's the third temple is inside of us. It turns into this consciousness thing. And meanwhile, all these people are covering their foreheads, through the bindu and stuff. And what does that do? Even the ashes, the Palm Sunday, it's darkening your pineal, which is releasing more melatonin. It's just, it's
what's the
fascinating.
chemical you said is released after death by the pineal gland? I think you were talking
melatonin
about.
Or metatonin. It's melatonin. Melatonin is like melatonin times 10. It's like the adrenaline of consciousness.
Can that be made synthetically?
Well, DMT is supposed to be,
Right.
DMT is a synthetic version of that. But apparently when you die, and that's why it's so deep in your skull, if you think about it, it's like an emergency ripcord.
Yeah, I like how you described that. It was very good.
Where that adrenaline kicks in, you secrete it. As soon as you secrete it, all these chemicals start to eat it. They don't want it to be there. But it secretes it fast enough where your consciousness is able to elevate like times 1,000. And that's where you have these Christ consciousness or all these other states that people describe where someone is, it's epiphany. It's the feeling of epiphany. That same feeling is really just a secretion inside your chrism, inside your sacred third temple. But we're trying to paint that as, no, the third temple's out here, and it's through shame, or it's through judgment day, or it's through, whatever else.
Why is that so hard sell to people? I mean, if I were to take that information and have the ability to teach that into your public school today, this one year I have the, what we're talking about, the human body is a temple class.
Yeah.
What do you think? Would it be a hard sell to kids? No. But after about age 18 and you're bought in and all that stuff, no one's accepting it, but it's right there. It's so obvious. It's so freaking obvious.
That's why it's a systematic attack on your ego. It's a systematic attack on salvation, on selling you salvation. Like, you're born into evil, you're born broken, you're born into sin, you're born stupid. You need to check your ego, brah. Your ego's getting way out of hand. You need to realize you're not an expert. It's just a constant barrage of
almost exactly like the voices that used to be in my head.
Yeah, I had those voices too. In fact, but think about what happens when you're a baby, man. The first thing they do, they pull your dick out and chop the end of it off.
I don't want to go there. I know that one I can't change, so that's upsetting. I don't.
But I mean, think about the trauma that goes through your mind when your mom doesn't even understand what's happening. So it's not like she's saying, "I'm sorry this happened to you." This is the exact dissonance that would lead you to believe that your body's not a temple because you've been told your body's dirty.
That's messed up.
I mean, so it makes sense though. Like, this is how you would geld a wild stallion. How would you do that? You would want to traumatize that stallion in such a way where his juice would not flow. Now the stallion's juice is going to be in his balls. Our juice is going to be right up here. They have to geld us psychologically. It's the only way to keep us on the ranch. Otherwise, we're all going to be like, I want to start an alchemical campground and I'm not going to pay taxes anymore. Like, that's what we'd be living right now if they weren't gelding us all the time. This is why they don't want you believing in the ether. This is why they don't want you believing in the underworld or whatever else it is. They want you to think this is what it's all about and nothing else.
So can we agree on one thing though? So I inherently had this stuff in me. I wasn't buying it. I have 7th grade education. I wasn't buying it in public school. I couldn't do a day in science class, and I wasn't stupid. I just felt empty when they're talking about everything being billions and billions of miles away. And I always held on to the shaming and not being part of the group and all that stuff. You know what I mean? Like the system.
Yeah, of course.
This is a warrior trait. It happens to a lot of us. I don't know why. Somehow I made it. You made it. And we held on. And I don't think that they can hold on much longer. The narrative cannot.
Oh no. That's why. That's why.
It's
This is why
awful
you
down.
see what's happening now. This is why you see what's happening now. This is why they're
Yeah,
arresting Epstein. They are losing focus. People don't believe in NASA anymore, Aaron. People
I
see right
know.
through
Right.
Apollo 11. Don't you see? That's a huge sign that this isn't, the gelding program is failing. This is why they're upping the ante by involving, think about it. Now they've got a pedophile billionaire uh, attached to the CIA, charge of kings and queens, with a cross-dressing president, with a giant drug trade, doing satanic ritual sacrifice in
That's good.
Hollywood, while
That's
George
good.
Clooney's giving them a blowjob.
Yeah.
They're literally throwing every single thing they can at this script because they need us to look at their pyramid. They need us to look into their eye and go, your drama is better than anything else in the world. Of course I'm going to follow you. The great awakening is going to be really the great turning away. It's on the turning away because it's more this is why campfire is such a perfect archetype, because you can only have at most maybe 100 people around a campfire.
Yeah.
The second you have more than that, it's time to build another campfire somewhere else. This is the essence of decentralization. And the second someone tries to get in the middle of the campfire and go, oh, I'm in charge of this campfire, they're going to get their ass burned. They're going to burn in the fire. This is why it's such a perfect symbol for us to
No,
build
it is a perfect symbol.
to build a new world around, is this idea of a campfire, because it's decentralized. It's not this fucking pyramid that's been ruling us for so long.
So yeah, I mean, I don't know. I reached out to you because of the Jerry stuff, and I think that's key as well. So now we're differentiating. We're having that separation. These thoughts aren't mine. The TV, those thoughts aren't mine. You know, everybody's running around going, "I know what's going on. I heard it on TV."
Yeah.
But did you have any of your own observations you want to share with me? Is there anything going on? Like maybe, you know, what they're saying on TV doesn't match up with my daily life. I'm at work. It seems like my day starts off, everything's going wrong, and here I am. This is actually my day. I'm just making things work, but yet I turn on the TV, and it's like this flawless drama of things that it doesn't match up. But no one's going, you know what? Those aren't my thoughts. Those aren't my ideas. That's not an original thought. I'm not, you know, it's scary. What unplugs everybody? Will it be the TV being turned off? Will it come organically like some of us? Well,
It'll be the charisma that people see off of you and me. Charisma is just the essence of understanding. In fact, someone said that the other day. It was one of the ghosts. One of the ghosts in Carl Wickland's book said, when you go to the spirit world, you're going to see imagine a field of flowers. Every flower is beautiful in its own way. Every flower has its own unique smell. Some flowers are going to appeal to you more, and it's only because they just understand more. Everything that you see as beauty is really just understanding. People see understanding inside of people.
yeah, they do.
They sense that someone understands something, especially when it's something they need. It's like pollen, you know. They sense that pollen like a bumblebee. And that's why the more of us, this is why I want to start an alchemical camp. That, notice, it's not a commune. My campground's a 6-week camp. It's like, get your ass out. It's you need to get your ass out and go start your own campfire, because that's how this charisma becomes contagious. That's how this understanding becomes contagious. And once you hit, what is that threshold, like 6%, it's over.
It
Because
is about 6%, isn't it?
yeah, especially when you're dealing with waking people versus zombies, because a zombie's not going to be able to hold the attention so long. Someone who's fully awake it's going to be more attractive. Someone's going to want that vitality. It's an addiction.
It is addiction. I hold the concept that not everybody walks this earth is even like spiritual. They might just be for these entities, these whatever. I don't know what embodies them, but it's not actual real spirit. So I don't know what the percentage of it is, but it's enough to have given the power that these people have inauthentically, like not it's that much. but then that's why 6% makes sense to me. There really may only be about 20% of us who actually are capable of waking up ever,
Yeah.
because
Oh, I agree. Yeah, because just like there are talented necromancers that can wake people up, it means that there has to be talented necromancers that can keep people
sleep.
asleep,
Yep.
and can actually create a bloodline train set. In other words, this bloodline, no matter how many kids they have, is going to be the perfect avenue for these elite demons that have been controlling this bloodline for a long time. I mean,
That's another thing. You really that's another turning point when you look at those people. That's not a human being. I don't know what it is. That's how it starts, but that's not what humans do. There's too much going on for any one of these people to comprehend all that at one time. There's something else there. I don't know if it's a computer. I don't know if it's a bunch of demons. All man.
Mm-hmm.
There's no way, because we all in our real lives, you can't know thousands and thousands of people. You just can't.
Mm-hmm.
You could probably keep 12 people in your life really that you know and have a really strong relationship, and that takes a lot of work. But somehow you're trying to tell me that President Trump or President Obama or any of these people know really what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
They act like they do. The things that they accomplish would say that they kind of do, and I would say that they do, but because they're not, there's something else inside of them. There's
Yeah,
something else
it's
going
no
on.
different than a thoroughbred horse that wins the Preakness or the Kentucky Derby. It's that horse. It's not like you're going to find that horse out in the wild and he's going to be able to outrun anyone. Like the second he's in the wild, he's going to be like, "Oh my God, there's a stick! Oh, that stick is scary!" Like it's not a real live horse, even though it's the fastest horse around. It's not a living creature. It's an instrument. It's an instrument that's, I mean, it's, it's the guys, people shave its balls every morning. They wax its hooves with car wax. It's not a real living creature. It's something totally different, It's
Right
a
on.
vessel. It's a demon vessel that gets bred. The same way that we like Cocker Spaniels over Chows, for example. It's really no different. The exact same things are happening, just up and down the ladder.
So I think, and another thing is, man, that TV has caused so much destruction just in our minds. We watch so much. I don't care if it's violence or whatever. Everybody's got this TV mindset of how things are, and they're not out in real life the way things are. Real life, I'm going to actually end this here with you soon. And my day is going to be real. It's not going to be fairy tale, whatever. And it's, lots of things are going to go wrong or not as planned. And I don't know if you're not able to comprehend and figure that out. I just don't think that you might just be an automaton robot, but you can sense it in other people who, they know it, but it almost seems like that population, that demographic really has a hold on them. That's that well, if they're acting that way, and they do it so well, some people, you just like, how the hell do you get through the day and able to accomplish all that stuff? There's something not right. When I was a child, I used to think this is the best way I could, I still remember this clearly for a long time. I couldn't figure out why people were treating the way that they treated each other. But I was like, I must be the only real human being and the rest are robots. That's, I've thought about that. And then you hear guys like Gurdjieff and stuff like that, and you're like, really? This guy's a revered spiritual leader, and this is what he's got to tell you, is that the rest of the world is potentially automaton NPCs, really? Or tulpas? What are they, being born without souls, or what's going on? That was organic. I might have been right, James, but they took that out of me. So I don't know. That's another part of this. I think a lot of, I'm 39 years old and I'm picking up all these concepts that I had as a kid. I'm looking at the stars at night and I see luminaries, and it works for me. It makes me happy.
Me too. Me
right?
too. Yep.
Just like when I was a kid, when I wished upon a star, and I did, still do, man. Look at a star. And, I talk to it. I communicate with a star. What's up with that? I'm a grown man. You're not supposed to do that stuff. Oh, yeah? Well, I do. And I'm happy. I'm healthy. I'm stronger. I'm wiser when I do that stuff. I don't watch History Channel anymore or Sci-Fi Channel. That crap. It's been a great talk, man. My wife is gonna be walking in the door here after a long weekend as an RN and dealing with those doctors. So.
Right on.